Dr. Audrey Maier, welcome to our Korean American Studies class. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's great to see everyone. Thanks for coming out, and I'm excited to share more with you.
And so wonderful to see you again. I know it's been almost a year in collaboration together. It first began when I saw your Hometown Heroes exhibit, and I was like, wow, this is so amazing. And the enthusiasm you had when you were sharing. And then it ended up being multiple field trips now to the Civil Rights Institute, leading up to a wonderful opportunity for our students, which we'll talk about later. But first, we want to know a little bit more about you. So I'm going to go ahead and give our students a little introduction of Dr. Audrey Maier, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Very good. Dr. Audrey Maier is a fifth generation resident of San Bernardino County up in Colton and Loma Linda, California. After studying art history at the UC San Diego, received her master's and PhD in public history from UC Riverside. Her work in the community began shortly after her family's history as she passed down stories from the family immigrating to San Bernardino County from Mexico in 1911. Dr. Maier has since worked to create alternative community centered archives, oral history projects, and history exhibitions, working with a number of other Inland Empire cultural organizations to develop K 12 lesson plans, host community festivals, and collaborate with local artists on specific installations. And of course, in addition to that, our Korean American Studies class as well. Dr. Maier is working with Executive Director Sabrina Gonzalez, and so thankful to partner with you, Director Gonzalez, as well. Last time we had a chance to meet, along with the Board of Directors, to advance the mission of the Civil Rights Institute all across Riverside, San Bernardino counties, and today also Orange County. Wild applause for Dr. Audrey Maier, everybody.
Hey, thank you, everybody. So I'm going to share a little bit about my journey because I think oftentimes, when you're deciding what you want to be when you grow up, it's not often you don't necessarily think of history as a path. So I want to share a little bit about my own personal journey. So if it resonates with any of you, you can sort of get a sense of how you might go about this. So my name is Audrey Maier. I'm the public history director at the Civil Rights Institute of Inland Southern California, and I got here really because I became really interested in my family's history. So, as Dr. Kim said, I have really long roots here in the Inland Empire. And I really started getting invested in it by hearing my family stories and also by seeing some amazing old photographs like these, which are from the, early 1900s. And you can see like awesome picture of my great grandmother and her tias on this little donkey, my great grandfather at an Americanization school. And it was just really about me connecting with the place that I called home and that my family has called home for so long. That really got me interested in this. And so I think it's sort of something that there might be a lot of folks that feel this way, but when I was in high school, I didn't feel that same connection to my family in place. And I really felt like, I wanted to get away. I felt like, oh, this area is too small for me. I need to go somewhere else. And so what I actually chose to do after high school was to go to UC San Diego. And I actually arrived at UC San Diego without any major chosen. I was actually undeclared, which was not a lot of my friends they knew exactly what they were doing, but I hadn't really figured it out yet. I knew I loved history, but I also really love science and chemistry. And so my goal in going to school was really to try to figure out what pathway I wanted to take. And so that's when I ended up going and taking a really amazing art history class and falling in love with this way of taking one object, a painting or a sculpture, and trying to understand it, but having to know history, having to know religion, having to know the poetry of the era, the fashion of the era, and trying to get all of this different information and tie it together. That's what I found I really liked. And as I did that, I found that I really loved not just researching things, but also making things happen. So I had the opportunity as an undergraduate to really work on creating some small art shows. One was at the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego. I did a lot of art shows on my campus at UCR, got to meet some amazing artists and curate their work. And that got me started about like, okay, how do I do this more full time? And I realized that I wanted to become a curator. And in many cases, being a curator, someone who cares for objects, someone who helps display and create content. I know sometimes we talk about like, content creation in the social media sense, but this was really taking historical objects and things, learning about them, researching them, and finding ways to interestingly display them. And that's what I became really obsessed with. And so then when I graduated from UC San Diego and I decided to go to UC Riverside, I really went there because they had what was called a public history program. I had never heard of what a public history program was. I sort of thought, oh, is it the history of public things? Like, what is this thing? But I learned, just because I had never been exposed to it, that public history was this really unique field about understanding how we can bring history to the public. That included how do you do education in museums? How do you get people invested? How do you bring more folks in to do that work? And also, how do you bring communities in to talk about and share and help build their own history? And so, when I started in on, it was a dual program, my master's and my PhD in public history, I started to get to not just learn about things, but do things. And I think that's been really something that's helped me along my journey is getting to do stuff. So I have some pictures here of some installations that we did at a nearby Citrus State Historic Park. I knew some artists that were local and we're like, okay, let's get artists into the groves. Let's activate this space. Let's bring poetry in. Let's bring in oral histories of people that worked and have them playing in the groves. Let's find ways to make a space that there weren't that many visitors in and it wasn't as active, more exciting. And that's what I try to do with all of my work. And my thesis work, because I was in a PhD program, when you're in a doctoral program, you sort of have to find what's going to be like your main topic that you're going to study and you're going to write a lot about. And for mine, I actually again looked to my roots. And when I was in third grade, I went on a field trip and we learned about a Mexican school. At that time, of course, I didn't know what that was, but I learned at that field trip that there were segregated schools. And as a kid, I knew about African American segregation, but I also thought it didn't happen here. I thought that it was something that was a story in the South. But then as I learned more about my own community, I realized there was segregation in my own area. And there were schools that were built specifically for Mexican students so they wouldn't go to school with white students. And I started to piece apart this history. There was only one line about it in a book. And I was like, there's got to be a bigger story about how this school was created and then how it was desegregated versus this one line. And so from there, I started to reach out, talk with people. I met Rose Collazo and Frank Collazo, who were living in Rafaela Rey's home. And I found out that Rafaela Rey, this amazing lady, she just decided one day, no, our kids should go to the same school. She talked to the school board. She got someone to run as a school board candidate to desegregate the schools. And they actually did that in the 40s, which was a really early time for that. So it was really fun to do some piece of history that hadn't been talked about. There was only one line about it, but I got to really research and pull out those stories. And then the fun part was getting to share it with others. And that's really helped me on my journey. And this is where I bring all this stuff together. There wasn't anyone talking about this, so I had to interview people, which we call oral histories, where we sit down with elders and we talk to them. What's your story? What stories haven't been told? Because there's a lot of times where, we try as historians to write really good history books, but we can't write everything. And there's a lot of things that are still missing. Sometimes I think when I was learning in high school, my history classes, I thought, oh, well, we know it's in the past. We probably have a good idea about it. But I've realized more and more that we only have this little tiny sliver, and that as a historian and as a curator, I get to sort of excavate through that and see what else is under there that we might not know. And by talking with people, you get a lot of history. Oftentimes, too, there are these places called archives. And if you're not familiar with that, an archive is sort of like a library where there's lots of things, but instead of books, they're what we call primary sources or the original documents of historical things. So that could be letters, it could be manifestos, it could be someone's diary, and they're all organized. But sometimes those archives, they might not have been created by everyone. And so often there are particular stories that never made it into archives. But I've talked to a lot of people that have amazing archives in their basement, in their attic, in the closet, in the garage. And by talking with them and asking if we could, research with them, they actually gave me access and we found amazing things. One of the things, you can see this little growth report here that's colored. That was showing me that there was a Mexican student that went to the white school in 1942. That hadn't been told before, but I was able to see she was the first to desegregate. And then later they had other students that went over and desegregated that school. But we never would have known that if I didn't have that report. And that was just by talking with people. And whenever I get this knowledge, my goal is always to share it out with people. So that's why we have amazing public events where we can actually share out these stories. And from there, I was able to do a lot of things online. I won't go through all of these, but we have a lot of cool projects. I'm sure if I shared some links with Dr. Kim, he would be so kind to share it with the class. But from all of that experience, I was really fortunate to be able to spend some time working at the Smithsonian at one of the newest museums, which isn't quite a building yet. It's just a museum in theory, called the National Museum of the American Latino. And we opened a gallery, and I got to be a part of that. I got to see some behind the scenes filming for the digital interactives. I got a look at how the gallery was constructed. And through that work, I was able to work on more digital technology, creating AR experiences, 3D models. But all of them, the focus was not just to have the technology, but to use it as a tool to teach. So for the AR model for an amazing artwork by the De La Torre brothers, you can hear their interview and about what they were thinking when they made that piece and what they wanted to do and what they wanted to convey. For the Tree of Life down here, you can actually look at all of the different figures. And that was really fun for me to be able to, at a national scale, bring these stories to the fore. And that's really what I do. And I'm going to pause now to answer some of the speaker questions, but I also have some slides later on, Dr. Kim, that get into more of the details about what I do specifically at the Civil Rights Institute.
Wow, that's just tremendous. And I can't believe that from that one line that you saw in your when you're just in elementary school, you said, I want to know this story more. And then you blew up that story so everyone could also learn that amazing story as well. Because tomorrow, coincidentally, a lot of our students will be going to the Mendez Tribute Monument Park out here in Orange County, and we'll learn about segregated schools as well. And so
Fantastic. Yes.
I haven't even thought about inland schools, but thank you for sharing that and
Yeah.
for breaking that important story. And also for reminding us that this content creation means caring for our stories. And you certainly
Yes.
have told some very important stories. You've cared for these stories, and we're thankful to hear them. So, in order to be as successful as you are, Dr. Audrey Maier, you must have had a community around you that's helping you. We'd like to, at CVA, call ourselves the bees. So, was there a hive community that you had people's places, practices that helped to renew your energy so that you could sustain yourself? Because this wasn't in the history books, so you had to kind of probably push yourself a lot, I'm guessing. Oh, did you have a group?
Yeah, and really it was coming back and reconnecting with this place, but also reconnecting with elders. And so it started with actually my grandparents and sitting down after graduating from college and feeling a little more connected and actually asking them like, "Oh, what did happen in the past?" Like, you hear family stories, but not really taking them in. So I was able to start there. And then I really found just a lovely community of elders in the places that I grew up that I didn't know them at the time. But then I started going and be like, oh, if I want to learn about Bryn Mawr, who should I talk to? Everyone's like, Fred Ramos. He's the unofficial mayor. You need to talk to him. And I spent so many times out on his porch listening to his stories. And I think it helped me feel more connected to the place when I was doing. It helped me sort of find like that meaning in my work. And by talking with them, it's been really powerful. And I think in some cases it's so sustaining because they've been through so much. And so when I come with some of these problems, they're like, oh no, you can do it. This and this happened in the past. Give some information, they give that inspiration of keep going. This work is important. But then it's also been really hard too because there are many people, like I mentioned, Fred Collazo. He actually passed away, and I had the opportunity to speak at his funeral, which was lovely, but it was also like really heartbreaking. So I feel like I just continue to be sustained by community, and talking with them, and especially our elders, just because, they have so much to share. And I think a lot of folks really want to share their stories, but they just might not think that anyone's interested. And I think being that interested person has really helped me and has helped me learn more about like my surroundings, but also more about myself too.
Well, that's really powerful that you found the community through conducting oral histories. And we haven't had a chance to do that as much in our course yet. But your sharing, I hope, is whetting all our appetites to talk to others in the community that know the story. And once again, as we talk about, and as you broke the story on segregated schools, many of these people, I know some have passed recently, but are still living. This isn't like
Yes.
history hundreds of years ago. This is within the lifetime of young people, older people now who are young people back then. So,
Mm-hmm.
so
Very
they,
much so.
we can talk to them. So thank you for capturing that. Now, I'm sure in your journey, because it wasn't so easy to find, it wasn't in history books, there must have been some challenges, potential setbacks. We might call this a sting. Was there anything that made it harder for you to do this work or you felt like was difficult?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would look for things. I would go to those archives and those libraries that I thought would have the materials, and then there'd be like nothing on nothing. Or there'd be something random in a miscellaneous file, but it was just, it would whet my appetite, but it wasn't enough. And so I sort of realized early on that I'm like, okay, these archives don't have what I ha need. So I'm gonna have to create my own. And that was a bit of a like, oh no, I have to create my own. But it was also a really great opportunity because I didn't take that no for an answer or that dead end. I was like, I see your dead end and I'm going to make my own tunnel. So I learned about how to do that. And I really did that on my own. I did a lot of research onto what is a community-based archive and what is a community-based archive. A community-based archive is an archive, right? That collection of things that started from the ground up, right? From grassroots movements of community to document their own stories in the way that they want to. And so I started this new way of archiving, which is becoming popular, but I was reading about it at the time, where because I'm in grad school, I don't have a giant museum where I can keep things, but I said, hey, could I digitally scan what you have? And would you give me permission to make it available publicly? And from there, I started what my very first archive, which was the Loma Linda Historical Society archive. And that really helped me with my whole dissertation. And from there, taking that knowledge I knew about how to do community archive work, I created the People's History of the Inland Empire archive. And now in my new job with the Civil Rights Institute, I've created an archive for them too. And it's so cool because there's just amazing things. And I get to sit with the scanner while someone's telling me about awesome stuff and get to preserve them for the future while also making sure that we're not taking important, family heirlooms and photographs away from people because we want them to stay with those people, but we want to share them and we want to get that info. So it was the sting that then caused me to sort of expand, and I wouldn't, I wonder if I didn't have that block, if I wouldn't have started doing community-based archives, which is now one of my favorite parts of my job.
Well, Dr. Audrey Maier, you're just revolutionary in storing the material through digital means. And once again, a reminder that social media can be used for social good. And a lot of us have developed these skills. And we could also, if Dr. Audrey Maier can do it on her own, this amazing archive, perhaps in our own communities, we could be creating archives as well. So she overcame that.
There's awesome Instagram archives out there. I can send a few links, but yes, social media can definitely be used for archiving.
So you've experienced many successes that we're hearing from, and we just want to just hear once again, like, and we, when bees work hard, they make honey, honeycombs, right? So what does that honey look like for you? What does success look like for you?
I think the thing that gives me that feeling of like this is why I do the work is when I see people seeing themselves represented. So sometimes there's that feeling of like, oh, I'm not in the history books. My family history doesn't matter. I don't see myself represented. Maybe it's in media, right? Maybe it's not in history, but it's in media, it's in advertising, it's in all of these other things. Like being represented, seeing someone that you can connect with is really important. And so, in a lot of the work that I do, for example, at the Civil Rights Institute, our building our region's Korean communities exhibit, there were so many people that walked in who were even Korean American from Riverside, came in and said, I had no idea this history is here. I didn't know that was there. But then they're pointing and they're like, oh, wait, I might know that person, or like finding those connections and seeing that representation happen. And then seeing, because you can sort of see it in people's eyes, that like empowerment happening. And I think that's the thing that really gives me that that thrill to keep doing that work because it's really, really amazing. We have a new exhibition out in the IE that's open, and there's been people walking in and they see a picture of themselves up and they're like, oh wow, I'm like, this is it. I'm represented. We had this amazing art show at the Citrus Park, and there was a school tour, and a little kid looked and he's like, wait. That's my Tia Elizabeth. What is she doing here? And then we ended up bringing her to the park and like being able to see that. And so I think that's the really big thing. And representation again can happen all across. So it's in history, but it might be also in, like I said, on social media, advertising, modeling, in cinema, all of those things. But for my little area, it's history.
Wow, so you've experienced so much tremendous success, but we know the work is not done. And
No.
so, what's one community, country, or global issue that you'd love to swarm with innovative solutions? There's only one Dr. Audrey Maier, but for everyone that hears this and for all our students, what do you wish we could swarm towards?
I think as I've done more, like the local is global at the same time. And so I feel like the idea that I want folks to come away with, and what I do a lot with my history work, because a lot of my work is local or regional history, is that our local actions and histories have consequences, they matter, and we need to be active at home to see those larger changes. And also we need to recognize that history is happening in our own backyards. It's happening right now, but that it also happened here because I think so many times we read about things happening in faraway places and we think, oh, that history happens somewhere else. It happens far from me. But I think focusing on the local, we can see how civil rights, social justice, these large movements, the seeds of them happen locally all over in our backyards. There might be some of our neighbors that are really championing these movements, and that's what our Homegrown Heroes exhibit was about. Was, you might be going to the grocery store next to someone that has fought for against segregation, right? And I think just looking there, looking at the local, and also feeling invested in the place you call home, wherever that might be. Because I think that's the place where we can start chain reactions, getting involved, civically, locally where you are, but then also having a knowledge of the place that you call home. Because as we like to say for the Civil Rights Institute, the reason why we focus on history is because we want to learn from our past to figure out why and like what's going on in our present so that we can have conversations about what we want our future to look like. And a lot of the time when we talk about like a future for the globe, it's almost too big or overwhelming. But if we focus on our neighborhood, on our communities, that's stuff we can do. That's stuff anyone can do. There's so many amazing students and high schoolers that are doing those changes, and you can make those changes locally. So I think that's my cue of like, global is great, but let's see what change we can make locally and then what chain reactions we can make that impact the nation, the region, and maybe even the world.
Wow, that might be the golden pollen right there. The local is
Yes.
global, and that's the place where we can start chain reactions, Dr. Audrey Mayer. So, I don't know. Is that your pollen, or do you have another golden pollen motto that you like to live your life by that you hope spreads everywhere?
Yeah. I think the one thing that I always say for exhibits whenever I'm doing tours and such is that our his family histories are really important. In building our region's Korean communities, we tell the amazing story of Camp, of Dosun An Jang-ho, of these leaders that were fighting for independence of Korea while being, in Riverside, in California. But we would hardly know that story if it wasn't because some people really chose to write down, to preserve, and to save things. So we had Violet Catherine Kim. So many of the pictures in that exhibit were from her family's collection. If that family had not saved those pictures, we would have hardly any pictures for that exhibit. There would just be a lot of text. But because they knew that their family history was important and they saved it across generations, we were able to do more research, and that grew into a whole exhibit that then we were able to share across the nation because it was a traveling show, but also with folks locally and with classes like you. So I think that's the thing of like, your family, your local history, it's important and we can all be history keepers. It doesn't mean that you are working in a museum or you have an official job, but if you're just like, your grandma has some pictures that no one else is interested in, but you want to take a look at them, hear the stories, that's being a history keeper too. So that's something that I always like to spread to everyone that walks through the doors of the Civil Rights Institute.
Guys, hear that? Another golden pollen. We can all be history keepers. That's
Yes.
one to remember as well. As our students have been challenged with so much already, is there a challenge that you have in your mind? They've already done, but what can they continue to do? What challenge would you like to give our students and anyone listening to this?
I think it's to be curious. Being a good historian means you're just really curious. And often I like to say that I got into doing history because I was really obsessed with like mystery novels growing up and detective novels. And I think being a historian is sort of like being a detective in the past. You don't have the danger of being a real life detective, but you have to piece together different things, figure out what most likely happened. And so that curiosity helps. And as a kid, I was curious about like, I learned about this school that I didn't know existed, but I want to know more. And I think that is the challenge of like being curious so that you can sort of start to maybe think about there might be some hidden or little known histories in your communities and your families that if you just look a little closer at might unravel into something really interesting. When I first thought of doing my dissertation on the Bryn Mawr School, I thought it would just be maybe more of like a paper. I didn't actually think it'd be a whole dissertation. I thought it would just be a fun like paper that I would do for one class, but it unraveled into something more. But it was because I was curious and I kept pulling at those threads. So I think just that challenge is to be curious and look for things that, might be peeking out, might be hidden and need a little bit more unearthing.
What a tremendous speaker story. Thank you so much, Audrey Maier, for sharing a little bit about the heart behind the work, the story behind the work. And there's so much good work happening at the Civil Rights Institute that I know you want to share more about. So you talked about some additional spaces. What additional spaces are there at the Civil Rights Institute that you want to share with us?
Sure, I was gonna share and let me sorry, I have to go through the whole resharing again. Give me one moment. Okay. Perfect. So the Civil Rights Institute, you guys have been there, but it's really awesome. We do a lot of great events and we've had a lot of other student groups come in, which is always super fun. So my role is the public history director. I've told you a little bit about public history, but sometimes it's a little confusing. So one of the big things I do is I help build community archives. And so often that looks like this picture over here with our lovely Connie Confer with her photo album looking through different pictures. We come armed with lots of post-it notes. She's telling us about the people in the pictures and we pull them out. And sometimes literally on site, we then digitally scan. But then we also have to do a lot of work online through a database. So you want to have database management skills. That's something that's definitely, in our new era of technology, you want to have those database management skills. But here we manage all of the objects. So we might have a picture of something, but if you just have a picture of it, it doesn't give you too much. You need to have that information. So we work on creating what's called metadata or the data, the data about the thing, so that we know when was it created, who's in the picture, when was it created, what material is it, all of those things. That's inputted then into our online archive, which is here. And our online archive is all sorts of things. It's materials from elders, but it's also going to be including new things like materials from students. And so this is something that we recently launched as a pilot and we're going to continue to build on, which is really fun. Another thing I talked about before is I get to do oral history interviews. And we are lucky enough in the Civil Rights Institute that we have a little soundproof room, which we call our media center, where we invite folks to come sit down. I have to set up this giant backdrop. We have cameras, we have lights, we have mics, and we actually just let people talk and share their story. Sometimes it's for 45 minutes, sometimes it's for an hour, sometimes it's more like 3 hours. But through that process, people get to sort of be the writers of their own history, and that's really, really special. And it's nice to be able to have that equipment and do it on site. And as you can see, being a historian, I have a lot of different hats. So I, do all of this other stuff, but then I also need to know how to film and do mics and set things up. So again, it's that curiosity of being willing to sort of jump in and maybe learn something that you didn't know. But a big part of my work as a curator is research. So often we'll have a topic like building our region's Korean communities was let's try to learn all we can about Korean Americans in the Inland Empire between, 1905 and 1930. And so I get to go out to some awesome places and look at stuff. Sometimes it might be a historical society, like you see in this picture with the green room. And I'm looking through old books and documents, trying to find sometimes what I call like the sliver of a sliver. Oftentimes you think and you always hope that there's going to be a lot of information, but historian has to be used to some disappointment and take joy in those moments where we find something, our little nuggets, right? Sometimes there's already very well curated collections. Like we see here, I'm looking at a zine. This man is David from uh, an archive in the desert. And so it was fun because he knew exactly what he had and he could show us awesome things that we might use. Sometimes I'm looking for a needle in the haystack. This machine up here is a microfiche machine. So it's a way for us to look at old newspapers. And there's no search on these. So I just literally scan newspapers around dates and times that I think something might have happened, and I just look. After a while, you get a little dizzy, but again, it's that searching for a needle in a haystack. And other times we get to actually touch and handle materials. So this is Dr. Carol Park. I'm taking the picture, but she's looking at materials that were from the Pachapa Camp era and looking at the collection of Violet Catherine Kim old notebooks and scrapbooks and actually getting to handle those materials, which is really a lot of fun and a lot of joy. So you get to sort of look in a lot of places, and oftentimes I cast a wide net to begin with, and you try to take in everything and then try to make connections between them. But then we also then work once we have that information. Oftentimes, I write a script that's quite long, and we have the details of a story we want to tell, but then we want to make sure that it pops, right? So we don't want to just, writing an essay is great, but we want those essays and those things and that content to connect with people. So that's why we put up exhibitions. Oftentimes, this first photo is us working with a designer. And she takes our script and we talk about what do we want visually? What colors do we want? How do we want it to look? And then we create a layout so that it's appealing and fun. Oftentimes, we then get to collect objects like you see in this bottom picture, and then we think about how we want to display them. Sometimes there's so many awesome objects, but there's not enough room. So we have to think about carefully how do we arrange them? What captions do we need for them? I get to handle amazing objects, and a lot of what I do is also focused on how we handle precious materials. So here you can see that I'm wearing gloves, and there's a whole procedure for how we handle and conserve objects because we want to make sure that even though we're putting them on display, which is very important so people can see them, we don't want to damage them. So there's a lot of conservation that I do as well. And then we do a lot of mock-ups. So you can see here, this is a mock-up of our exhibit with all the different panels. And then you can see in the top photo, those panels life size, where we actually have someone that comes in and physically installs them. So there's a lot of moving parts. It's writing the content. Well, first you have to research the content, then you have to write the story, then you have to find the images, then you have to find the objects, and then you have to put them together in a way that will connect with people. And I think that's really the fun part of my job is getting to pull all of that together. And I think I will end there because I think my other one, yeah, it's the boring one and grants. So I will end there on sort of the fun parts of curation. And I think with the time, how much time do I have
Actually,
left?
do share about the grants. I mean,
Oh,
not
sure.
not everyone gets to hear this amazing story from an expert like this. I know that when I first met you last year for the Hometown Heroes exhibit,
Yeah.
and it was complete coincidence we connected, and I didn't even know there was going to be a Korean American exhibit. Students, you can see the enthusiasm I heard then, and I said for sure we have to make some type of connection between Dr. Ajmer and our students, and you are receiving this now. All this wisdom, all this experience from a professional and expert in your field. And you're right, grant funding is important in terms of like how do we fund things like this? And this is good for us to think about too. Dr. Ajmer, please do share.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, we get to do all of this awesome work, but we also need to find the money to do so. And luckily, there's a lot of really amazing foundations, sometimes it's state funding, that helps us do our jobs. So there, let's see, oh yeah. One of the most recent grants we got was from the California State Library, and they were looking for people to actually do more archiving of California history. So we applied and we wanted to talk about Inland Empire history, which was little less represented than other places. So we made that argument that this is important. These are objects that need to be preserved. There aren't people that are doing that. Help us do the work. And so they were able to fund us sometimes. It's a little bit out of left field, and you have to be really creative with how you write the grants. So, an example of that is here with the IEHP Foundation. So, this one we didn't ask for money for an exhibit, but we said, hey, as part of what we do at the Civil Rights Institute, we connect communities. We often host events that are a space for dialogue. We want to be a community hub where people, again, can learn their history and think through, what they want to do with that information. And so IHP Foundation's like, oh yeah, you're definitely helping with aspects of what they call vibrant health, being a lifelong learner, having a big civic muscle. Those are things that were important to them, so they were able to fund us, even though you wouldn't necessarily think that a healthcare plan would fund a museum. So oftentimes I have to be pretty creative. Another one, the Mark S. Taper Foundation. They said they only funded LA County places. And I wrote back and I said, well, the Inland Empire receives far less money than from private foundations than from Los Angeles. Maybe you can consider. And I talked about a program that we were doing that was definitely within their interests, and they decided to fund us, which was really amazing. So as a grant writer, you also have to be pretty creative and, you know, I guess flexible in the way that you seek out opportunities. And that's honestly for a lot of my work. There's a lot of times where I'm going out, you see something and you're like, okay, I'll take advantage of that opportunity. Or someone will say, oh, you can't do that. And then you have to just say, no, I don't think so. We are going to do that. We're just going to find a more creative way. And grants is definitely a place like that where I do a lot of creative thinking about how we can bring some more funds to our organization so we can continue to do the work that we do because we feel it's really important. And we have a lot of fantastic visitors that come through, so many school tours. And so we want to continue to do that work. And so, yeah, that's something that I do as part of my job as well. I help with volunteers. We do all sorts of public programming, but it really is all in service of connecting people by sharing our stories and by learning how we are similar and we have these shared ideas and values. And that's really what we want to try to do here at the Civil Rights Institute. So yeah, that's my piece on grants. I did have a place
So,
for questions if we had time.
it does sound to me like the grants then are kind of like scholarships. You know, how students apply for
Yes,
scholarships, and
definitely.
many of our
Yeah.
students applied, and they've been getting them in my class. But this is like a scholarship for the organization, you could say, but you call it a grant.
hmm
But it's kind of like a proposal. It's kind of like an essay, but for your organization. Are there some similarities there?
Oh, definitely. Oftentimes, the first part of any grant application is tell us about you. And so, very similar to scholarship applications as well as to applications for college, you have to tell your story, talk a little bit about, you know, what you're interested in, how your sort of life journey, and sort of encapsulate that in a way that resonates with someone else, which is often really hard to do. I know. for me, it was very hard with the college essay about writing the personal bits. But I still have to do that for grants for our organization. We have to talk about our mission and our vision in the same way that you would sort of talk about your own personal mission and goals in a scholarship or a college essay. So yeah, very similar. Unfortunately, you'll continue doing that throughout your life, unfortunately or unfortunately. But I'm sure that you guys have been writing some really stellar scholarship applications, and college applications might be coming up on the horizon too.
Yes, many have applied already, scholarships, and some probably are making decisions sooner, some are waiting in a little bit, but that's kind of where they are in the journey.
That's
And
exciting.
yeah, and we're so thankful to have been given that invitation from Executive Director Sabrina Gonzalez, who shared with us about the bus scholarship, actually, which was kind of reserved more for a different area, but
Mhm.
they definitely wanted our Korean American Studies class coming, so we got a special invite. And without that $500 bus scholarship, it would have been difficult for us as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you were mentioning questions.
I can either take questions, but looking at the time, I can also transition to our collaboration.
Very good, very good.
Okay,
So
let
we had
me.
a tremendous collaboration between the Civil Rights Institute and our Korean American Studies class. They've had many students go to this facility, and we have many students in our class also learn about history. But in this situation, you weren't just history scholars, you were history makers. And so, how was our class history makers along with the Civil Rights Institute in partnership together?
Definitely. We were so excited because, and I was telling this to Dr. Kim before we came on, but sometimes as part of being a curator, what's really rewarding too is seeing what people take from our exhibits. And so it was fantastic to have the Korean American Studies program come out as a class and see the exhibit. It was lovely. I love talking about that with Dr. Park. But it was really, really exciting to see the interpretations of that content from you all, being those content creators. And I think what is really challenging sometimes is creating things that are short. Sometimes it can be really hard to explain a big topic in a brief way. And what I was so impressed with was the way that these videos that you created so succinctly talked about this content in a way that we could share with so many people. So actually, on our website now, in our Korean Building Our Region's Korean Communities page, on our exhibit page, we are now actually featuring 5 of these incredible videos that were produced by you all. And I think it's really impactful to see some of these amazing videos. So now anyone on our website can come and view those videos. We also have them cross-linked on our educator portal because we want to continue to do more collaborations like this. This was our very first one. We had never had students actually come in and create content in the way that you all did. And so it was really, really special to be able to see that process, see what amazing stuff you guys created. And now we're going to be sharing it through our audiences, but we're also going to share this as a model that we might be able to use with other classrooms. So I hope that you all feel very proud of what you were able to accomplish. And we were so excited to be able to feature, not, we weren't able to feature all of them, but we did select 5 finalists who are going to be featured. And we are just really thrilled and excited to have this on our website and on YouTube so people can come and see. I mean, you guys were amazing in like a few minutes being able to digest a lot of that info. So, yeah, that was a little bit about the collaboration. I know I've sent some certificates to some of the amazing folks who are featured as part of our 5 on the website. But I also wanted to share that it's not just me that's saying that, but I was able to talk to Sabrina Gonzalez, our executive director, this morning. And she wanted also to send through me her congratulations because she was also really impressed, especially with the video editing ability of some of these videos. It was just really impressive. And so, both, myself, but this is also a congratulations from all of the Civil Rights Institute staff, as well as our board, including our board president, Lana Wilson. So, Big round of applause. And this was like so fun and just very impressive, all of the things you all were putting together as history makers, as curators. And we're hoping in a little bit, we'll also be able to put some of these on our archive as well. So they'll be in three places so that we can make sure that people find them and know that this is an incredible resource for them to continue to learn a little bit more Korean American history in our region.
Wow, wild applause, everybody. This first of a kind collaboration, also a model to share with other schools and our five finalists. This is tremendous, tremendous, tremendous. Wild applause, everybody, once again. And then
Awesome.
Dr. Audrey Maier, we'll talk in a little bit, but let's once again give her a wild applause for just coming and sharing her story and then sharing about the civil rights and do all that. Let's give her a wild applause, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. It was really fun. And Dr. Kim has my email, so if anyone would like to get in contact with me, please do. I'm always happy to answer questions. If you have questions about career path or are interested in history, please do reach out. I'm always happy to talk through those things.
Thank you so much, Dr. Audrey Maier. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you. This was fun.